The galaxy knew fear. Every living being from the outer rim to the core worlds whispered the same name in the dark. Vorthok. Even saying it out loud felt dangerous. Commander Thexril Bonerender stood 12 feet tall in his black armor. His forearms moved like deadly snakes as he studied the star map. Each red dot showed another world that belonged to the Vorthak Empire. 300 years of conquest. 300 years of perfect fear. The command deck of his ship buzzed with activity. Lesser Vorthak officers moved between the control stations. Their obsidian skin gleamed under the red lights. Sharp claws clicked against metal surfaces. Everything about them was designed to create terror in other species. Thexril looked at the newest target on his screen. A small blue planet called Earth. The creatures there called themselves humans. According to the intelligence reports, they were weak. Soft pink skin with no natural weapons. No claws. No fangs. No armor plates. They would break quickly. Status report, Thexril commanded. His voice carried the weight of countless victories. The Fear Fleet is ready, Commander, replied his second-in-command. 50 dreadnoughts, all equipped with terror projectors. The psychological warfare units are prepared for immediate deployment. Thexril nodded. The Vorthak way of war was simple and effective. They did not need the largest armies or the most powerful weapons. Fear was their greatest tool. Other species surrendered before the first shot was fired. He remembered his first conquest as a young warrior. The Zelani had been a proud warrior race. They had strong weapons and brave hearts. But after just 3 days of Vorthok psychological attacks, their leaders begged for mercy. The sight of Vorthok terror squads had broken their will completely. The same pattern played out on world after world. The Vorthak would arrive with ships designed to look like nightmares. Twisted metal hulls that resembled giant bones. Hull plating that seemed to drip with blood. Sound systems that broadcast screams and horror across entire planets. Then came the demonstrations. The Vorthak would select a small city or settlement. They would use their advanced technology to project each victim's worst fears directly into their minds. The psychological torture was perfect. It left no physical damage, but destroyed the spirit completely. Within hours, planet-wide surrender always followed. No species had ever resisted for more than a few days once the Vorthak began their fear campaigns. Tell me about these humans, Thexril said. His intelligence officer stepped forward. They are primitive, Commander. Still using chemical rockets for space travel. Their weapons are basic projectile systems. They have no natural defenses against psychological warfare. Population? Approximately 8 billion spread across 7 continents. They are divided into many small nations that often fight each other. They should be easy to break. Thexril studied the tactical data. Humans averaged only 6 feet in height. They had no claws or natural armor. Their skin looked thin and easily damaged. Most interesting, they seemed to be emotional creatures. Their history showed they often made decisions based on feelings rather than logic. Perfect, Thexril thought. Emotional species were always the easiest to terrorize. He walked to the massive viewing window that looked out into space. Stars stretched in all directions. Each one represented systems under Vorthak control. Trillions of beings who lived in constant fear of his people. The Vorthak homeworld of Zerion Prime was a monument to that fear. Black towers reached up into blood-red skies. The architecture was designed to intimidate. Every building looked like it could collapse and crush anyone inside. Screaming winds never stopped howling through the streets. Even other Vorthok felt afraid on Zerion Prime. Fear was their culture. Fear was their religion. Fear was their strength. Commander, we are ready to begin the approach, his navigator reported. Excellent. Begin standard fear protocol. I want every human on that planet to know we are coming. The Vorthak fleet moved toward Earth like a wave of darkness. Their ships projected holographic images of death and destruction ahead of them. The psychological bombardment began before they even entered the solar system. Thexril had conquered 47 worlds in his career. Each one had fallen within days. The humans would be no different. Soon, Earth would be another red dot on his victory chart. His communication officer suddenly looked up from his station. "Commander, we are receiving transmissions from the human planet." "Already? What kind of transmissions?" "It appears to be their entertainment broadcasts, sir. Something called comedy shows. They seem to be laughing." Thexril paused. Laughter, during an invasion, was unusual. Most species either panicked or tried to send desperate messages for help. But humans were laughing at their entertainment while a fear fleet approached their world. "Ignore it," he decided. "Continue the approach. Deploy the terror projectors as soon as we reach orbit." The fleet moved closer to the small blue planet. Thexril felt the familiar excitement that came before a conquest. Soon, the humans would learn what real fear meant. They would beg for mercy just like every other species. He looked at his reflection in the metal wall. Black exoskeleton, burning red eyes, razor-sharp claws. 3 centuries of evolution had shaped the Vorthok into the perfect fear-inducing species. No creature in the galaxy could look at a Vorthak warrior and not feel terror. "Entering Earth orbit now, Commander. Begin the fear broadcast. Let them see what nightmares look like." The Vorthak ships took positions around Earth. Massive holographic projections began appearing in the skies above every major city. Images of death, torture, and destruction filled the air. The sound of screaming echoed across continents. Thexril watched the first reports come in from his scouts. Human military forces were mobilizing, but they moved slowly and without coordination. Their leaders seemed confused and frightened. Everything was proceeding normally. "Select a target city for the first demonstration," he ordered. His tactical officer highlighted a location on the planet's surface. Seoul, South Korea. Population approximately 10 million. Good communications infrastructure to spread the fear to the rest of the planet. "Perfect. Deploy the terror squads. Begin immediate psychological conditioning of the local population." Thexril smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Another world would fall to the Vorthak Empire. Another species would learn to live in fear. The humans would surrender by tomorrow, just like all the others. He had no idea that everything was about to change. Kim Min-jun was cleaning the 42nd floor of the Samsung building when the sky turned red. He stopped pushing his cart and looked out the window. Strange ships floated in the air like giant bones. Horrible sounds echoed across the city. Min-jun was 43 years old. He had worked as a maintenance worker for 15 years. Every night, he cleaned office buildings while the city slept. He was used to quiet nights and empty hallways. This was definitely not quiet. His phone buzzed with emergency alerts. The news showed the same images everywhere. Alien ships, panic in the streets, government officials telling everyone to stay calm, while they clearly were not calm themselves. Min-jun sat down in an office chair and watched the news. The aliens called themselves Vorthok. They looked like nightmares with black skin and too many arms. The news reporters could barely speak while showing pictures of them. "This is really happening," Min-jun said to himself. He decided to go home. His small apartment was only a few blocks away, but when he reached the street, everything had changed. Military vehicles rushed past. People ran in all directions. The red sky made everything look like a horror movie. Then the real show began. Massive holographic images appeared in the air above Seoul. Min-jun stopped walking and stared up. The images showed terrible things. Death, torture, monsters eating people alive. The sounds were even worse than the pictures. Around him, people screamed and fell to their knees. Some tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The images filled the entire sky. Min-jun felt his heart racing, but he kept watching. Something about it felt wrong. Not scary wrong, but fake wrong. "Attention, humans." A voice boomed from the sky. It spoke perfect Korean. "You will surrender now. Resistance is useless. We are the Vorthak. We are your fear made real." More holograms appeared. Vorthak soldiers 12 feet tall, with glowing red eyes. They moved like predators, hunting prey. The message was clear. Submit or suffer. But Min Jun had seen enough horror movies to recognize good special effects. And these were very good special effects. Suddenly, strange aircraft dropped from the larger ships. They looked like flying insects made of metal. The craft landed in the streets around Seoul. Doors opened, and real Vorthak soldiers stepped out. Min Jun had never seen anything so scary in his life. The soldiers were exactly like the holograms, but real. Black armor, multiple arms ending in claws, faces designed to create pure terror. They moved through the streets like death itself. People ran everywhere. Cars crashed as drivers panicked. The Vorthak soldiers did not chase anyone. They just walked slowly, letting their presence spread fear. It was working perfectly. Min Jun found himself hiding behind a parked car with about 20 other people. Everyone was crying or praying. The fear was so thick he could almost touch it. Then the Vorthak began collecting people. They set up a gathering area in the main square. Flying drones herded people like sheep. The drones projected images directly into people's minds. Min Jun could see others around him reacting to things that were not there. They were experiencing their worst nightmares while awake. "Move toward the collection point," the drones announced. "Resistance will result in enhanced fear protocols." Min Jun joined the crowd walking toward the square. He had no choice. The Vorthak soldiers formed a circle around several hundred people. Their red eyes scanned the crowd like searchlights. One Vorthak stepped forward. It was even larger than the others. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am Terror Master Vex High. You will now witness the power of the Vorthak Empire. Watch and understand your fate." The Terror Master pointed at a young woman in the crowd. Immediately, she began screaming. Her eyes rolled back, and she fell to the ground. She was seeing something terrible that no one else could see. "Your minds are open books to us," Vex High announced. "We know your deepest fears. We can make them real." Vex High. Vex High. Vex High. More people began experiencing the mind torture. An old man clutched his chest and gasped for air. A teenager curled up in a ball, crying for his mother. The fear was spreading like a virus. Min Jun watched it all happen. He felt scared, but something else was growing inside him. Anger. These aliens were bullies. They were hurting innocent people for no reason except to show off their power. Then something unexpected happened. Terror Master Vex High was walking between the prisoners, choosing his next victim. He moved with careful, dramatic steps designed to build fear. Each footstep was perfectly timed for maximum psychological impact. But the Terror Master was so focused on looking scary that he did not notice the broken piece of concrete in his path. His foot caught the debris, and he stumbled forward. For a moment, the 12-foot-tall nightmare warrior looked exactly like someone slipping on a banana peel. Min Jun blinked. The most terrifying creature he had ever seen had just tripped over a rock. Vex High quickly recovered his balance and tried to continue his intimidating walk. But the damage was done. Min Jun had seen behind the curtain. The scary monster was just another being that could make embarrassing mistakes. The Terror Master began selecting another victim for psychological torture. But as he moved, Min Jun noticed other things. The way Vex High kept checking to make sure his armor looked right. How he positioned himself for the best dramatic effect. The careful timing of his movements. This was not a natural predator. This was someone putting on a performance. A small sound escaped Min Jun's lips. Just a tiny snort of amusement. He quickly covered his mouth, but it was too late. In the dead silence of the terrified crowd, even a small laugh was like a gunshot. Terror Master Vexhai spun around, his burning red eyes fixed on Minjun. "You dare make noise during the demonstration of Vorthak power?" Minjun looked up at the towering alien warrior. He saw the elaborate armor, the dramatic pose, the carefully practiced intimidating stance, and suddenly, he could not stop himself. He started to laugh. Not nervous laughter or the mad cackling of a broken mind. Real, genuine laughter at something he found truly funny. Here was this creature trying so desperately to be scary, and all Minjun could see was an actor who had forgotten his lines. The effect on Vexhai was immediate and shocking. The Terror Master actually took a step backward. Minjun could not stop laughing. The harder he tried, the funnier it became. Here was this giant alien, covered in scary armor, with multiple arms and glowing eyes, looking completely confused because someone was laughing at him instead of screaming. "You will stop this noise immediately," Terror Master Vexhai commanded. But his voice cracked slightly. For the first time in his life, someone was not afraid of him. Minjun wiped tears from his eyes. "I'm sorry, but you look so serious, like you practiced this speech in a mirror." He gestured at the Terror Master's dramatic pose. "Did you rehearse the scary walk too?" The other prisoners stared at Minjun like he had lost his mind, but something strange was happening. A few people had stopped crying to watch. The overwhelming fear was breaking apart. Vexhai raised his clawed hand to strike Minjun down, but then he hesitated. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever laughed at a Vorthok warrior. His training had not prepared him for this situation. "The human has been broken by fear," another Vorthak soldier suggested. "His mind has snapped," but Minjun was not broken. He was finally seeing clearly. These aliens were not gods of terror. They were just bullies, with good technology and scary costumes. And bullies always had one weakness. They were terrified of being mocked. "Look at his face," Minjun said to the crowd. "He's more scared than we are. He doesn't know what to do when someone isn't afraid." A woman near Minjun slowly raised her head. She looked at Terror Master Vexhai with new eyes. The Vorthak warrior was shifting from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. His carefully practiced intimidation was falling apart. "You're right," she whispered. "He does look nervous." The whisper spread through the crowd. People began really looking at their captors, instead of just cowering in fear. They saw the truth that Minjun had discovered. The Vorthak were putting on a show. And like all performers, they needed their audience to believe in the act. Vexhai tried to regain control. "Witness the power of Vorthak mind torture." He pointed at Minjun and activated his fear projector. Minjun's vision filled with horrible images. Giant spiders, falling from great heights, drowning in dark water. Every phobia he had ever felt crashed into his mind at once. But something unexpected happened. Instead of screaming, he started laughing even harder. "Oh, come on," Minjun gasped between laughs. "Giant spiders? That's the best you have? My grandmother could come up with scarier stories." The fear projector was designed to be irresistible. No species had ever been able to resist the direct injection of terror into their minds. But Minjun was not resisting the fear. He was finding it ridiculous. About unraced, and he ta'en. Other prisoners watched in amazement. The Vorthak's ultimate weapon was being mocked by a maintenance worker. If Minjun could laugh at their worst torture, maybe they were not as powerful as they pretended. "Perhaps we should try enhanced protocols," suggested another Vorthak soldier. "No," Vexhai said quickly. He was beginning to panic. 3 centuries of successful fear tactics were being destroyed by one laughing human. Continue with standard procedures. But it was too late. The laughter was spreading. An elderly man near the front of the crowd started chuckling. He had noticed that one Vorthak soldier kept adjusting his armor like he was uncomfortable. "They look like children playing dress-up," the old man said. A teenager pointed at another Vorthak. "That one is trying so hard to look scary. It's like a bad movie monster." More people began to see what Min Jun saw. The Vorthak were not supernatural demons. They were just another alien species with an elaborate intimidation strategy. And when intimidation failed, they had no backup plan. The crowd's mood shifted completely. Fear transformed into amusement, then into something much more dangerous for the Vorthak: contempt. People began pointing and commenting on the aliens like they were exhibits in a zoo. "Look how carefully they walk. It's all choreographed. The red eyes are probably just contact lenses. I bet they practice those scary poses in front of mirrors." Terror Master Vexhai was experiencing something no Vorthak had felt for centuries: helplessness. His weapons could still kill these humans, but killing them would not restore the fear. The psychological foundation of Vorthak power was crumbling in real time. Someone in the crowd started taking pictures with their phone. Then others joined in. Soon, dozens of people were recording the confused and frightened Vorthak soldiers. The aliens who had conquered the galaxy through fear were being turned into a viral video. "Stop recording," Vexhai ordered, but his voice had lost all authority. "Why?" asked a young woman. "Are you camera shy? Don't want people to see that you're not actually scary?" The recordings were already being uploaded to social media. Seoul had strong internet infrastructure. Within minutes, videos of humans laughing at Vorthak warriors were spreading across the planet. People around the world watched in amazement. The terrifying aliens from the news looked silly and confused in the amateur videos. Comments poured in, mocking their dramatic poses and elaborate costumes. "They look like bad cosplay. My little brother is scarier when he plays monster. Is this really what conquered the galaxy?" Back in the square, the situation had completely reversed. The Vorthak soldiers stood in the center while humans circled them, pointing and laughing. The prisoners had become the captors without anyone firing a single shot. Min Jun walked up to Terror Master Vexhai. The massive alien warrior actually stepped backward. "You know what your real problem is?" Min Jun asked. "You've been terrorizing species that never learned to laugh at their fears. But humans? We make jokes about everything. Even death doesn't scare us as much as embarrassment scares you." Vexhai tried one last time to assert dominance. He drew his ceremonial fear blade, a weapon designed to cause psychological trauma just by being seen. The crowd burst into laughter. The weapon looked exactly like something from a children's cartoon about evil wizards. "Oh no," someone called out. "The scary sword of scary scariness." Vexhai lowered the blade, defeated. In his earpiece, he could hear panicked reports from Vorthak commanders around the globe. Humans everywhere were laughing at them. The conquest was not just failing, it was becoming a joke. On the command ship orbiting Earth, Commander Thexril watched the feeds from Seoul in growing horror. His perfect fear campaign had become a comedy show. And worst of all, the laughter was spreading to other worlds. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn that fear only works when people choose to be afraid. News traveled fast in the age of galactic communications. Within hours, videos of humans laughing at Vorthak warriors were spreading across every inhabited world in the galaxy. Species that had lived under Vorthak rule for generations watched in amazement as their supposedly invincible oppressors were mocked by creatures they had never heard of. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Zelani workers gathered around hidden communication devices. The Zelani had been the first species conquered by the Vorthak 300 years ago. They had surrendered after just 3 days of psychological warfare. "Look at this," whispered Elder Zixra, showing the others a smuggled video feed from Earth. "The humans are not afraid." Quote, the video showed Min Jun pointing at Terror Master Vexhai and making jokes about his dramatic poses. Around the galaxy, millions of beings watched a simple maintenance worker treat the most feared species in existence like a bad comedy act. "If humans can laugh at them, what does that make us?" asked a young Zelani miner. The question spread like wildfire. Species after species began asking themselves the same thing. The Vorthak had not conquered them through superior technology or numbers. They had won through fear alone. But if one species could refuse to be afraid, why couldn't others? On Zerion Prime, the Vorthak homeworld, emergency sessions convened throughout the Black Towers. High Command had never dealt with anything like this. Their entire civilization was built on being feared. What happened when that fear disappeared? "The situation on Earth is contained," reported Intelligence Chief Morgoth. "Only one city has been compromised." "Contained?" Supreme Fear Lord Drakthul's voice echoed through the chamber. "I am watching feeds from 47 worlds, showing our warriors being mocked by primitive mammals. How is this contained?" "Accident." The truth was spreading faster than they could stop it. Rebel groups on conquered worlds were sharing the videos as proof that the Vorthak were not unstoppable. For the first time in centuries, subject species were organizing resistance movements. On Earth, the situation continued to deteriorate for the invasion force. What had started as one man's laughter had become a planet-wide phenomenon. Humans everywhere were treating the Vorthak as a source of entertainment rather than terror. Commander Thexriel stood in his command chamber, watching his perfect conquest turn into a disaster. Reports poured in from around the globe. In Tokyo, humans were making cartoons about clumsy Vorthak soldiers. In New York, comedy shows were performing skits about the invasion. In London, children were playing games where they pretended to be scared of Vorthak warriors and then laughed at them. "Perhaps we should withdraw and try a different approach," suggested his tactical officer. "Withdraw?" Thexril's forearms trembled with rage. "The Vorthak Empire does not withdraw. We have never retreated from any world. But retreat might be their only option." The psychological warfare that had worked for 3 centuries was not just failing, it was backfiring. Every attempt to intimidate humans only made them laugh harder. The situation became even worse when human military forces arrived in Seoul. Instead of fighting the Vorthak soldiers, they joined the crowds of people, taking pictures and making jokes. "Are you going to arrest us with your scary claws?" a human soldier asked Terror Master Vexhai. "Should we be afraid of your spooky armor?" Do. Vexhai had been reduced to standing silently while humans mocked everything about him. His fear projectors no longer worked. His intimidating presence had become a tourist attraction. Groups of people were lining up to take selfies with him. "This is humiliating," he reported to his superiors. "We need immediate extraction." But extraction would send an even worse message. If the Vorthak ran away from laughing humans, their reputation would be destroyed forever. They were trapped in an impossible situation. The rebellion had already begun on 17 worlds. The Andorian collective, enslaved for 2 centuries, declared their independence after watching humans mock Vorthak soldiers. The crystalline beings of Sigma Draconis stopped sending tribute payments and started broadcasting human comedy shows across their planet. Most dangerous of all was what happened on Proxima Centauri. The Proximan rebels had been crushed by Vorthak forces just 6 months ago. But after seeing the Earth videos, they launched a new uprising. This time, instead of cowering when Vorthak ships appeared, they projected images of the Seoul incident onto their buildings. The Proximan rebels played recordings of human laughter as Vorthak troops landed. The psychological effect on the soldiers was devastating. Vorthak warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves hesitating before creatures they had defeated many times before. "The humans have shown us the truth," broadcast rebel leader Kefri. "The Vorthak are just bullies who dress up in scary costumes. But bullies are always cowards underneath." On Zerion Prime, panic spread through the highest levels of government. Fear Lord Drakthul convened the Supreme Council for an emergency meeting. The massive chamber filled with the most powerful Vorthok in the Empire. But for the first time in their history, they looked afraid. "The situation is critical," reported Defense Minister Gaxriel. 17 worlds in open rebellion. 23 more showing signs of unrest. Our garrison forces are requesting reinforcements on 41 planets. "What about the fear protocols?" demanded Drakthul. "Increase the psychological pressure. Break their spirits. That is the problem, my lord. The fear protocols are no longer working. The humans have shown other species that our intimidation tactics are just theater. Once beings stop being afraid, our advantage disappears." The council chamber fell silent. For 3 centuries, the Vorthak Empire had ruled through terror. They had never developed backup plans because fear had always worked. Their military was designed for psychological warfare, not actual fighting. Their economy was based on tribute from terrified subjects, not productive capacity. If fear stopped working, the entire empire would collapse. "What do we know about these humans?" Drakthul asked. "They are a paradox, my lord. Intelligence reports show they are one of the most violent species in the galaxy. They have spent their entire history fighting wars against each other. But they also create something called humor, which seems to immunize them against fear-based attacks." Humor? The ability to find amusement in threatening situations. When they laugh at something, they stop being afraid of it. It is a psychological defense mechanism we have never encountered. Drakthul studied the data about human warfare. They were indeed violent, but their violence was different from Vorthak intimidation. Humans fought with desperate courage, not calculated terror. They made jokes during battles. They found ways to laugh even when facing death. "Can we negotiate with them?" "Unknown, my lord. They seem more interested in making jokes about us than talking to us." On Earth, Minjun had become an accidental celebrity. News crews from around the world came to interview the maintenance worker who had started the Galactic Rebellion by laughing at aliens. But he remained humble about his role. "I just thought they looked silly," he told reporters. "All that dramatic posing and scary acting. Like children playing monster games." His words were broadcast across the galaxy, inspiring millions of beings who had lived in fear for generations. The Vorthak Empire was crumbling. And it all started with one man's refusal to be intimidated by bullies. 6 months after Minjun first laughed at Terror Master Vex High, the Vorthak Empire was gone. Not destroyed by war, not conquered by enemies, but simply abandoned by a galaxy that had stopped taking it seriously. The collapse came faster than anyone expected. When fear disappeared, the elaborate structure of Vorthak power crumbled like a house of cards. Their ships still worked. Their weapons still fired. But without the psychological dominance they had relied on for centuries, they were just another species with technology. On Zirion Prime, the once mighty capital had become a ghost world. The black towers still reached toward blood-red skies, but most were empty. Millions of Vorthak had fled to distant systems, unable to cope with a galaxy that no longer feared them. Supreme Fear Lord Drakthul sat alone in the throne room that had once commanded an empire spanning 1,000 worlds. Reports lay scattered around him, each one telling the same story. Another world declaring independence, another Vorthak garrison retreating without a fight. Another species that had once trembled at the mention of his name, now making jokes about his people. "My lord," his last remaining advisor entered the chamber. "The Council of Former Subject Worlds has sent another communication." Drakthul did not look up. "What do they want now?" "They are offering humanitarian aid, my lord. Food supplies and medical assistance for Vorthak civilians who have been displaced by the political changes." The irony was crushing. Species that the Vorthak had terrorized for centuries were now offering to help them. Not out of fear, but out of something the Vorthak had never understood. Compassion. And what do they expect in return? "Nothing, my lord." The humans suggested it. They said that just because someone was a bully doesn't mean they should be left to starve. Drakthul finally raised his head. Through the throne room's massive windows, he could see Vorthak citizens in the streets below. Without the Empire's structure, many had lost their purpose. Some had adapted, learning to interact with other species as equals. Others had retreated into isolation, unable to accept a universe where they were not feared. The transformation had been most dramatic among the younger generation. Vorthak children who had grown up believing they were destined to be the galaxy's apex predators now played with alien friends through galactic communication networks. They learned other languages, shared stories, and even developed their own sense of humor. It turned out that when they stopped trying to be terrifying, Vorthak could be quite creative. On Earth, the world had settled into its new role as the species that had accidentally liberated the galaxy. Human diplomats worked with representatives from former Vorthak subject worlds to establish new trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. The fear-based empire had been replaced by voluntary cooperation. Minjun still worked his night shift at the Samsung building. He had been offered better jobs, book deals, and speaking engagements, but he preferred his quiet routine. Sometimes, though, he would look up at the stars and smile, knowing that somewhere out there, people were free because he had found something funny. "Do you ever regret it?" a reporter asked him during his last interview. "Starting the rebellion that destroyed an empire?" Quote, Minjun considered the question while mopping the floor. "I didn't destroy anything. I just laughed. They destroyed themselves by building everything on making other people afraid. That was never going to last forever." The reporter pressed further. "But thousands of Vorthak lost their homes and their way of life, and millions of other people got their freedom back. Plus, the Vorthak are learning to live differently now. Some of them are actually quite nice when they're not trying to be scary." This was true. Many Vorthak had integrated into galactic society as engineers, artists, and even teachers. Their natural height and strength made them excellent construction workers. Their attention to detail, once used for perfecting intimidation techniques, translated well to scientific research. Terror Master Vexhai had become a case study in successful rehabilitation. After months of therapy and cultural adjustment, he now worked as a safety inspector for interstellar shipping companies. His naturally imposing presence helped ensure that safety regulations were followed. But this time, people appreciated his intimidating appearance rather than fearing it. "I spent 300 years learning how to make other beings afraid," he explained in a documentary about former Vorthak warriors. "Learning how to make them feel safe was much harder, but also much more rewarding." The galactic community that emerged after the Empire's fall was stronger than what had come before. Species that had been isolated under Vorthak rule now shared technology and culture freely. Trade flourished as worlds that had once sent tribute now conducted business as equals. Humanity found its place as mediators and problem solvers. Their unique ability to find humor in difficult situations made them excellent diplomats. When tensions arose between species, human negotiators could often diffuse conflicts by helping both sides see the absurdity of their disagreements. The former Vorthak territories reorganized into the Galactic Cooperative, a loose alliance based on mutual benefit rather than fear. Each member world maintained its sovereignty while contributing to collective projects like scientific research and disaster relief. Some problems remained. Not all former subject species were ready for immediate independence. Worlds that had been ruled for centuries needed time to develop their own governments and economies. A few Vorthak extremist groups refused to accept the new reality and continued attempts to restore the Empire through terror. But these were manageable challenges, not existential threats. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Fear was a powerful force, but it was also fragile. Once people stopped being afraid, they could accomplish amazing things. In the end, the Vorthak Empire's greatest weakness had also been its greatest strength. By ruling through fear alone, they had never needed to develop lasting institutions or genuine loyalty. When the fear disappeared, Nothing else held their empire together. Minjun finished his shift and walked home through Seoul's quiet streets. Dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in soft colors that were nothing like the blood-red skies of Zerion Prime. Children were walking to school, adults were starting their commutes, and life continued in all its ordinary, wonderful complexity. Somewhere among the morning stars, the galaxy was waking up free. And it had all started with one man's decision to laugh instead of cower. Not because he was brave or wise or special, but because he was human. And humans, for better or worse, found ways to laugh at almost everything, even the things that were supposed to be scary. The empire of fear had collapsed not with armies or weapons, but with the most human sound of all. The sound of someone refusing to take a bully seriously. And the galaxy was better for it.